Good morning. Welcome back to Missional Conversations. I'm Anne. I've got with me Simon and David. Do you go by David or Dave?
I go for either, depending on
Either.
But both, either and both.
And Jill with us today, hailing from Belfast this time, and Simon's down in Greystones and I'm in Dublin. So great thing about Zoom and Facebook Live is we can be all sorts of places. Thank you for joining us, guys. Simon is my co-host again. Simon's a part of the Praxis team with me, leads it, and is also a chaplain down in Greystones and works for the Methodist Church. And the Hines will tell you who they are. I'm Anne. If you don't know who I am, we've been doing these for the last few weeks, and it's just a great chance to hear from different people from all over Ireland doing missional things. So today, this week is Holy Week, and usually I have a question for us. So do you guys have like an Easter tradition that you do or did as a kid? A favorite thing about Easter or Holy Week for all of us to answer? A little tidbit.
Well, there is one memorable thing is once when we lived in India, we acted out Palm Sunday, and I think it involved me being the donkey and a kid on my back.
And then we had palm.
No, we had palm branches.
We had real palm.
Because we had real palm. That was the fun thing.
That was the fun thing.
And so literally they were like whacking me with palm branches.
Oh.
And that was somehow memorable. And then we were talking this week. We've got 4 children, and well, they're teenagers now. But Jill said, "Oh, we could do an Easter egg hunt," and I was like, "Oh no, surely not." You know, I mean, like our eldest is now 18. You know, so. But the kids were like, "Oh no, you can't have Easter without an Easter egg hunt," and it's and so I feel we failed as parents in the sense that I feel the emphasis is all in the wrong place. do you know what I mean? It's all about chocolate.
They're very excited still about Easter egg hunts. But...
That's great. So, Simon, do you have a favorite Easter memory or tradition?
I'm interested in David's. I'm just wondering, did the whole village come out to beat you with palm branches?
Or just like 2 people?
I didn't know we had our team, which was very kid heavy at that time. So
do they turn on you then a week later?
Exactly. Yeah,
they did. Some of the adults maybe put a foot in there as well. I'm not sure, but it was a bruising experience all around.
I think tradition, probably Easter egg hunt is one thing I enjoy doing for kids. I think the holy answer then, Easter sunrise, Dave, you mentioned it earlier when we were chatting about the sunrise service. I enjoy that. Don't particularly enjoy the getting up. I love when Easter is in March or early April because it's not too early. But I remember Easter being at the end of April sometimes, and it's like 5:30. It's a whole different story.
yeah, with the sun.
What about you, Anne?
I think we didn't do Easter egg hunts. We always had a basket with our name on it somewhere hidden in the house. So I was one of 4 kids. And mom and dad would hide it, and we'd have to find our basket. So if I found my little sister's, I had to leave that there and not tell her where it was and keep going around the house. So, and it had eggs in it or chocolates or, those like big chocolate bunnies as well, that you're hoping is solid, but they're always hollow.
They're always
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, happy Holy Week.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us again. Will you tell us a bit about yourselves, where you're from, kind of a bit of your life journey and sort of the missional side of life as well? I don't know. This will be interesting.
So our accents, you'll know that as we talk, we're not from this land.
From Belfast.
I'm actually originally from the west coast of America. And I did YWAM when I was younger and came over to Dublin and lived in Dublin for a while. And while I was there, I met David, who was doing YWAM up north in Belfast. And so we were a YWAM couple that met and fell in love. And he was living then in, I know, it's one of those.
You will all marry. That's
it. And then he was living in Belfast at that time. So
Banbridge.
Well, no, when we got married, you were in Belfast. So then when we moved, we got married and moved to Belfast and worked for a church in Belfast for about 10 years. And had 4 kids in that time. And we then decided, we had kind of always known we wanted to go a little bit further afield, maybe outside of the Western world. And so we kind of were keeping our eyes open and listening to where that would be. And a cycle of events happened, and we kind of ended up in the south of India, in Kerala. So we bundled up our 4 kids and went out to the south of India to a place where we were the only foreigners, and that was quite an experience. We were there.
Was Sethi 2 or 3?
3, I think.
I was going to
Sethi was
say,
three.
so
Our youngest was 3.
Youngest was 3. Wow.
Youngest was 3.
Yeah. So we then stayed there for 4 years, and then we moved up the hill to another area where we worked with a local
Up
charity.
the hill, up a very,
mountain.
very big hill.
Very big mountain. Yeah.
To a hill station, as they grow tea and coffee and things up there.
So how long were you in India then in total?
8 years.
Okay, and what was the reason you went there for, and what did you do in those?
We went out with an organization called Frontiers, who it's a mission organization, and they would focus on unengaged Muslim people groups. So there is a large, actually it's the largest Muslim people group in India is actually in the north of Kerala, that area. They're called the Mappala people, and they would have been the ones who engaged in the spice trade back in the day. So the north of the north of Kerala, there's where you get all your black pepper from Tellicherry and place. You know, it's all pepper and cardamom and cinnamon and ginger, all that stuff, all those spices. Yeah, basically, probably if you look into your kitchen cupboard and you look through all your spices, you'll see some of them are from Kerala.
Cool.
And then obviously the Arabs who engaged in that spice trade there between there, there's a whole history. I won't bore you, but it's a very old. It's pre. It was that trade was existing before Muhammad. So then after after Muhammad's death, missionaries would have come from Arabia to the south of India with the spice trade.
Wow.
Actually, St. Thomas, that's where St. Thomas ended up as well. So he would have come in there. So
that is a St. Thomas church that dates back to
cool.
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas ended up quite far flung, so he wasn't always a doubter, but
and then the second we were there for 4 years with those people groups, and then we went up the mountain to Tamil Nadu and worked where Amy Carmichael actually
would take her holidays.
She went up.
That's
where she would kind of go for her retreats and things. So she was very much a part of that. We actually met some people who called her Auntie Amy.
That's
our
cool.
Indian grandmas she called her Auntie Amy. So it was lovely. And we worked there with a local charity. So there was a local run charity that was just doing amazing work. And we came in to do some development work with them and getting some self-sustaining businesses going to help support it.
So that was more focused on the poor and the needy rather than Muslims per se. So then we stopped working with Frontiers in the sense that was their bag.
Yeah.
And then ended up really just with this local charity for about 4 years.
Okay, so it was trying to help people with business entrepreneurs. The
charity. So the charity itself worked with kids in slum areas. Their whole aim was to get them through education, especially girls through education. So they worked very directly with them, and so we then came, and it's quite an unstable time at the moment in India as far as government goes, and Christian and Muslims are getting quite a lot of shut down. A lot of Christian Muslim charities are getting shut down from the predominantly Hindu government. So we were then saying, they were very dependent on foreign funding. And so we were then saying, okay, the entrepreneurial part then came in, and we said, what can we do? They had a property, which was an old colonial building. And so we took that, which just wasn't really being used.
It was a beautiful property.
It was really lovely, kind of green space. And we then took that and made that into an Airbnb, like a boutique Airbnb that had 8 rooms that people from all over India, because a lot of people come to Ooty for holidays because it's cooler there. So we then made that, and that is now running and doing really well. It's really lovely. Then they're running it themselves. And so after we did that for 4 years, we then decided, we need to step back and let them run it and do it. And so our kids were getting to an age when we needed to come back as well and just focus on their education. Our oldest is just finished.
She was 16 then, so she came back. She'd just done her GCSEs in India. So they went to a sort of an old mission school there called Hebron, which has been often sort of missionaries or kids who grew up in India on the mission field went to Hebron. It was like set up in that sort of 1900s mission movement. you get to see some of that when you're living out there. You get to see the legacy of that sort of initial worldwide mission movement, over there. Anyway, so Mia had just done her GCSEs there, but it was about time to sort of everyone at that stage, huh?
You left the highlands of Uti in India to come back to South Belfast.
And who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
We were actually really excited to come back.
We were
we were ready. We miss India desperately, but we especially now, but we're really missing it.
But I think we're led by the Spirit. I think
we were really ready. We really felt like it was time. It was good.
It was the right time, and especially, and then lo and behold, we got back sort of 6 months later. COVID kind of hit the world. So
it hasn't been very long that you've been back to Belfast.
No, a couple of years. So it was a big transition back, but it was a great experience there. Lots of different experiences and learning opportunities. And funny, on the subject of mission, you see legacy of mission in the third world. Some of it good, some of it very weird and bizarre and abusive. So it's a funny, it's the story that doesn't really often get told, sort of Poisonwood Bible type stuff, but often I think one of the big questions you'd have to ask is, who is this for? Who's benefiting from this genuinely? And it's always a good question to ask, why am I doing this and who is it for? And so, I mean, the project we took over had been started by a Swedish lady called Margit, and it was brilliant. But even her charity, sort of that sort of set it up, was called Hilf Margit Hilf, which in Sweden means help Margit help, which is fine. And she did a lot of good work there. But the emphasis then is on Margit and the great work she's doing in South India, and I think we have to get that. David Hines Ministries International, Ravi Zacharias Ministries International.
It has a ring to it, David. It has a ring to it, definitely. Yeah. What
was it for,
Yeah.
What were some of your learnings then, like coming back from India and seeing some of that, the past missionary efforts from the West largely? What have you seen stuff? Have you learned stuff? You've been back in Belfast now, what, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years? What are your learnings apart from maybe one of the you shared there?
I think one of the big things when we were coming back, just authenticity was really important. I think from the very beginning, that was a real big word, that just whatever we do, we're just really so aware that it needs to be authentic. So a little bit of what David was saying, who is this for? Why am I doing this? And I think you see a lot of ego on the field as well, and a lot of in the mission field, sadly. You see it in church, everywhere, don't you? You see a lot of ego, and you realize actually it's so easy for myself to get in the way of this. And so I think for a big part of what we're looking at doing next and into the rest of our life, I think those are really important questions to be asking. The authenticity of it.
I think authenticity is a huge thing. And I think, if you talk about posture, I think that's a good word these days, posture and practice. But, I think the posture of mission, you'll have heard of Paul Brand. He was the doctor who gave his life to discovering a cure for leprosy. And Philip Yancey talks about him in some of his books. So we knew people who had been associated with his ministry back in the day. And we're talking about someone who genuinely, in all humility, dedicated his life to serving the least and the most rejected and the most broken in society. And he left a legacy. We talked about Amy Carmichael earlier, and we had a friend who called her Auntie Amy, and there was and they called her Amma, which is mummy is what it stands for, and she basically, again, a single woman in a patriarchal world who went out to India against everyone's best advice and gave her life to rescuing and raising orphan girls. And they are her legacy, Now, she also wrote books, which is why we've heard of her, because she was a poetic soul who thought quite deeply and was a bit of a contemplative. So she kind of funded her ministry and the global interest in her ministry through her books. But she spent the last years of her life, she kind of broke her back, or she did something. She had an accident, and she spent the last years of her life bedridden and in a lot of pain, but died in India, giving. Thomas Merton once said, India doesn't need any more missionaries, but send us your saints.
Yeah.
And
Bless.
so the point is, and I mean, Gandhi said this, Mother Teresa said, exemplified this. I think Gandhi once said, all of India would fall at the feet of your Jesus. We have no problem with Jesus. India loves gods, they love religion, and they recognize holiness. So send us your saints.
Yeah.
People recognize a holy person, so they recognize someone who is embodying goodness and righteousness, and they respect that for what it is. But we don't need more of your formulas or more of your professional, ego fueled, I'm going to change the world in my name kind of thing. That can do more damage than good. So I think these are all big learnings, that, and then obviously we have to then work that out into our own lives, and all of us have an ego to overcome and a walk of discipleship to follow, and so I think these sorts of principles, are big learnings. There's good and bad, and what is our posture?
Yeah, one thing we've talked about is when we, if you cut a cake, if you were to cut us in any direction, in any way, let us always bleed Jesus. Let us always bleed the same thing. Let it not be looking different depending on where you cut us. So I think that's the point of this next season of our mission as well. The idea that actually, as long as we're able to keep that authenticity and that look of Jesus all the way through, whatever we do, it doesn't matter. It's pointing to Jesus. So it can be an amazing thing, or it could just be a really everyday, ordinary thing, and it's just Jesus.
But that's in India. You'll have, I mean, obviously there's the own issues of sort of post-colonial, Westerners doing mission work in India. That has its own bag. But often we very much intentionally tried to take the humble position, not in a painful way, but in deliberate ways. We just intentionally tried to always raise up those around us and diminish. Even leaving was part of that. Now it's time for us to leave. We've been useful, and now let's leave. And the project we set up is pulling in 20 grand a year now for that project. So because that's the Indian tourists going to an Indian-run business as an Airbnb and them earning their own money that's all about self-sufficiency and self-dependency, and not being so dependent on the foreign income, which is strategically important in a time of Hindu nationalism and all sorts of stuff. But praise the Lord for that. But then it's about leaving, and allowing them to go up. But then you come back here. I think what should our posture be in mission? There was an interesting article in the Guardian yesterday. Now that we've had a census here in the UK this week, and they're predicting it's the first census where less than 50% will declare themselves as Christian.
Okay.
And this is a sea change. The UK is becoming post-Christian. But then it was also saying it's also post-atheist. It's also less people are atheists these days. There's lots of people are sort of somehow spiritual but unsure and uncommitted. And in this, what should then our posture be? We don't have the authority of Christendom anymore. People, especially here in Northern Ireland, I mean, anybody who thinks they have, I grew up in the south of England, and talking about Christianity with my skeptical mates, and they'd say, "Oh, Northern Ireland isn't that where Christians kill each other?"
Oh, geez.
Okay, so what should our posture be as Northern Irish Christians? And I consider myself one by choice. What should our posture be as Northern Irish Christians? Should we be as self-confident and proud as we sometimes are seen? Or should we be more humble and repentant for the conflict which is obviously around us, which we've obviously contributed to in some ways, in good, and there's been great examples of peacemaking, but there's been also examples of mistakes. And I think just go back to posture. What was Jesus's posture? And last Thursday we celebrated it, didn't Jesus, knowing that he was Lord of all creation, that he knew where he'd come from. Jesus knowing where he'd come from and knowing where he was going to, so fully self-aware, took off his garment and wrapped a towel around his feet, and then started to wash his disciples' feet. So it took taking the position of a servant and washing his disciples' feet, even Judas's feet. Washing Judas's feet, washing the broken, washing the betrayer, washing. And then Judas, he didn't work with Judas. He didn't get, he still didn't get it. They ended up betraying Jesus and committing suicide. But Jesus still had that posture of servant-hearted hospitality and love towards Judas. Yeah. And some of them didn't get it, but some of them did. You look at Peter. Peter got it eventually, and the great fisherman ended up,
But even him, it was like, wash my head and hands and the whole thing. Yeah.
But there on the beach, he's the shepherd. He becomes the shepherd of the church. And
that's so true.
So posture. What's our posture?
Yeah. And in that, what does that actually look like for you guys now that you're back in Belfast, and that posture, the hospitality? Tell us a bit about those sort of like practical things of what does life look like for you now in Belfast?
Yeah, so we then came back and talked. We're actually not Methodists by birth.
Well, this is kind of a Methodist posse. Don't wreck the group.
That's okay. You do whatever you want to be, Jill.
Well, we're becoming. We're quite convinced. We love where it came from and what
we're happy to be here.
But we in a series of events started talking to some people, John Alderdice and Heather Morris, and through that development and that conversation, we then came to work for the Balnafy circuit in South Belfast. So there's 4 churches on that circuit, and they've been praying for 5-6 years with their reverend there about how they engage missionally. It's, they would say very clearly that they're not going to be around in sort of 5 to 10 years. It's an older congregation, it's an older circuit. Wow. And so they then sort of were saying, well, what do we do with the buildings and the resources that we have? So we were then brought in as pioneer mission workers like yourself, and we then started to dream about what that looked like with the resources that were there. And one of the first things we started doing, which I think probably really we felt very convicted about in India, that anything that we do mission-wise comes out of prayer first, that we don't just tag prayer onto that as a side thing, but actually we start with a rhythm of prayer that actually births then the mission. So we started a rhythm of prayer in the church where we were there at the beginning just at 5:30 every day, and we just we go through a bit of liturgy and then pray. Some people joined us, and then COVID hit. So we actually stopped going to the church, but actually then we were, as much as I hated Zoom at the beginning, I'm getting to like it a little bit more now, but well, maybe a little bit. Well, but we were able to take that onto Zoom, and actually we then started which a lot more people were able to join, and then we started a 7 o'clock Zoom prayer as well. So in the morning.
I was like, is it 4:30 in the morning or in the evening?
No. Sorry, so it was evening first.
I was gonna say, I was like, well.
No, we're not there yet. That's years down the line yet.
Jesus would love us extra specially if we did that.
Sorry, morning time and evening time then.
Yeah. So we started that, and that's just been a real gift, that rhythm of starting your day and ending your day with a group of people that you're praying with every day is really, really special. That's been a really special thing. And so then as we were praying and looking at what this looks like, the 2 words that really came up were prayer and hospitality. So that focus of prayer, but then the hospitality, this feasting table of Jesus, that he welcomes us into his kingdom. And so we started thinking, well, what could we do practically before COVID hit? So there was a community choir that had been going and with people that had not from the church, and it was up to about 100 people, which was amazing. Yeah. And then from that, we then said, hey, we're going to do a community meal on a Thursday night, and anybody is welcome. So we got L'Arche, which is do you guys know L'Arche? It's a
Jean Bagné's.
Yeah.
So they have a kitchen here. We got them in to make the meals every Thursday. And then we just had, and when lockdown sort of started, we were having about 70 to 80 people a week. coming to eat together. And that was really, really
cool.
special.
again, it
That
was-
was a really special time.
And again, we would sing grace. I mean, it was very you know, we tried to, again, it's about this posture of humility that doesn't overly exploit the fact that this is a church building in order to ram the gospel into everyone who comes through the door. So, but we did then not hide away from that. So it's not like, oh, we're not Christians, sorry, sorry, sorry. It's more sort of like, you are genuinely welcome. Let's sit down now, and then find a level. We would sort of sing, thank you for the food, thank you for the food, thank you for the hands that made the food, and blessings on the food, blessings on... And because we had the choir people in there, they would do little harmonies with it. And it was quirky and fun, and it was about something that everybody of all faiths and none could engage with. And then it created this atmosphere of gratitude and community.
Mm-hmm.
And I was following, I follow Pete Gregg on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he said back in January, he says, churches which flourish on the other side of this pandemic will be those that engendered a sense of belonging throughout the isolation of this season. Never in my lifetime have so many people simultaneously been so hungry for encouragement and love. And I think we all recognize the opportunity of that. But I think this is something that we were experiencing there at the time. There was people don't want flashy, they want genuine. And that there is already a spiritual hunger, as the Guardian article said. It's just people know what they don't want to believe, which is the models that has been offered to them before, but they're not sure what they do want to believe. So there is a spiritual hunger, but there is also a hunger for community and for authentic love and kindness and belonging. And what does that all look like? And you know, I think it just takes a bit of imagination for us to just, but it doesn't matter. This is the thing which I'd sort of say, methods, it doesn't really matter what method works. I mean, you said, Anne, about your Alpha course you're doing at the moment. Great. Alpha's a great model. You see all these, you know, people using it. It's a very much a reaping, you know, very much going into the evangel, you know, and talking about all. So brilliant. There's Alpha. It's sitting there for us. But, you know, a community meal is a lovely gathering thing. A community choir has worked beautifully. But it almost doesn't matter what you do if you're doing it from the right posture, and if it's a spirit-filled action. You know this, John 15 is one of my favorite verses. You know, abide in me, and you'll bear much fruit that will last. And I have quite a conviction that we can all, as evangelists or mission workers or church workers, we can all get busy. And you know, the best of us have a calendar full, and I'm so busy, busy. And you know, and often it's just meetings about meetings, you know, or often it's meetings. But we can all get very busy, and we can all produce fruit, lots of stuff that we've done, you know. But the trick is that the fruit that will last, and that's not in any of our gift. We can't do that. That's the Holy Spirit's genuine lifelong work in somebody's life, and that's the nugget. That's the prize. It's the fruit that will last. And I mean, we all know the story of the hand. I see that hand. Oh, I was saved at the age of whatever it is in a meeting, and now I've become president of the United States. You know, it's do you know what I mean? We all know that the hollow conversion story, and we all know that's not where it's at. But we all know that also there's something in there that is important. But but we're missing the main thing? And I think this is where talk about postures, you know, talk about posture of humility and servant leadership and servanthood and genuine. But I mean, we started our prayer thing not because we wanted to advance mission in the church, but because we were scared that in coming back to the West, we were going to lose something of our joy and our focus and our reliance on Jesus. And we would just get busy being Christian, or being busy. We'd just get busy and preoccupied with all the options that are available to us here, you know, and they are many. And we've got 4 teenagers as well. So we were scared that we were going to just get busy and miss the mark. And I think for ourselves, even if nobody turned up to prayers, it was just us, that wasn't a waste. It wasn't that we failed in some way, because we're not doing it for anyone else. We're doing it for ourselves, because we fundamentally want to structure our lives around this discipline of prayer for our own sake, because without it, we're actually taking a break over the Easter holidays. And so that's been very much a blessing with the time change this week. We found ourselves, lurching awake at certain times. And so even this week, and I was joking with the guys, they were saying, oh, but if you take a break, then obviously, Dave, you'll be praying loads. And I was like, the problem is I won't. And yesterday and today, I haven't. I listened to my Lectio in the shower, my Lectio 365, but that's it. I haven't been praying. And there's people who are kind of depending on me praying for them. I haven't really been praying for them the last couple of days, I say to my shame. So it's not that I'm a great prayer. It's that I want to keep this focus because I have a conviction that if we deliberately hide under the shadow of his wing, then he will bring the increase. Do you see? And he will guide us in different things. The inspiration will come, the moment will come, the opportunity will come.
So we had a little prayer hut in India that was made out of mud and clay, and we would go there, and it's funny because looking back, you don't realize it at the time, but loads of our practical ideas for the mission there were born there. We kind of and it wasn't a big moment, it wasn't a big kind of like you should make bagels in the bakery.
Bagels was an idea, wasn't it?
But it came from there. We kind of started talking about it after we prayed, and we sort of thought, oh, maybe that's a good idea.
That daydreaming bit when you're kind of like, it's like,
so
you realize actually that they're not big pow moments most of the time, but it's the, Henry Nouwen talked about it's only in retrospect that you see what prayer does. As you look back, you see actually what daily sort of routine prayer does. It's really boring in the midst. It's not easy, and oftentimes really boring and feels very pointless, but it's in retrospect you see that. So that's practically it's important part of what we do, but not always exciting.
And what's the difference between a good project and a spirit-filled project is they probably look the same from the outside, but they're compelling in totally different ways. I think one is someone can have a very bumbly presentation but be powerful, and we all know that, don't we? We've all experienced that ourselves, the love of some 70-year-old gentleman who says he's been praying for us every day, and doesn't know anything about youth culture and what's in and what you're really doing with your life, but you're very touched by his obvious concern and dedication.
Simon, do you have any other questions, or guys, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think just in going forward, do you have hopes or dreams? Just we're finishing up, we've gone over the half an hour, just one or two things you have hopes and dreams for. It's really interesting just hearing what you said and how the foundations of prayer and that servant leadership and authenticity shapes what you do. You have any thoughts on what that looks like?
Yeah, so practically we're sort of hoping that we can, we'd like to take the building. So the Balnify building, which we were talking about earlier, is very massive and big. And some people think it's very beautiful. Some people think it's not very beautiful.
Only architects, only geeks think it's beautiful.
Only weird architects think it's very beautiful. So we've got this big, massive building, and we're trying to think, what do we do with this? But out of the last sort of year, we've come up with this 3-phase plan, which we're hoping as we come out of COVID, we're hoping that we can implement. And so we've got an architect in, and what that looks like is sort of this idea of hospitality again. We want to get a living presence within the church, so we're going to build some accommodation for community members. So the idea is to sort of this urban monastic idea of community that's living in the church, that there's a presence for every day, all day. Everybody knows that it's alive and there's lights on and it's vibrant and it's a community living within the property itself. So, and then the rhythms of prayer happen throughout the day, and then eating together, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of the hospitality side of it. Then we're looking at wanting to build some housing on the back of the property, and there's kind of room for about 4 different houses there, and we were looking at how we can use that as a missional embrace, as far as possibly towards vulnerable women or asylum seekers, refugees, that sort of community, and welcoming, again, giving them a safe space and a refuge. And then the final phase is looking at the sanctuary, and this is down the road, but hoping to make that into kind of an arts and maybe a dry pub or something like that. This idea of a hospitality space that the public use every day as an arts venue and that sort of thing.
I tell you, there's a couple of principles behind this, and because we've sort of said it doesn't really matter what you do. And there's 3 ideas for you. But I mean, the reason why we're building social housing on the back of the church is because if the parable of the kingdom is the great feast, then to be honest, those who are comfortable and set in their ways aren't interested in attending. So you have to go out sometimes to the highways and byways to find people who are grateful for the good news, who are interested. And so in one sense, you compel them in to the feast, and then you get your towel on and you become a good host, and you have to make sure the meal is good and the welcome is warm. But also, can I say, the church has drifted away from its roots. We've drifted away from the poor. So what's in it for us is we actually get a vital connection with people in need, and we're forced to confront them on a daily basis, and we're forced to engage and love them on a daily basis. So actually, it's even for our sake. Yes, and there's also a principle there of giving away what you have. You know, we talk in Romans 12, all life discipleship, your daily walking everyday life, give it all as a living sacrifice to Jesus. Yeah, it's a quote about Wesley. He said, if I die with £10 in my pocket, call me a thief. You know, and I've deprived God of his money that he could have used for his kingdom. We should apply that to our properties. You know, this is our resources that God has given us. If we die with wasted resources on the ground, then God forgive us. You know, everything should be offered to God as whole life discipleship. So even for our churches and our institutions, how is my building serving the Lord? How is this waste ground serving the Lord? How is my sanctuary serving the Lord outside of Sundays? So we need to start doing an audit of our time and our resources in that way and offering it all to Jesus. And then, all of these things the parable of great feast, it's a big kind of guiding principle of what we're doing. And I think in all of that, there's fun and exciting things that you can end up doing. But the big things aren't more important than the little things. You know, I really genuinely think that, yes, we want to do, I think our price tag is £1.5 million for everything we want to do.
Not much.
But so and we'll see.
Yeah.
But to be honest, that we could get excited about that, but we've even been deliberately not talking about that very much in this talk, because it doesn't matter so much. That will be great, but if we've stopped praying and we've stopped thinking in these hospitable, Jesus first, servant-hearted posture type ways, then it's all wasted. It'll just be another white elephant. Oh, there's another church renting out its property to businesses to have seminars, which is fine. That's good. Let's do that. That's an entrepreneurial angle that will bring some. That's all good. But why are we doing this, and who's it for? Yeah,
that's a brilliant question. And I love that picture of the feast as well. Lots of food, lots of people, like chaotic but fun. People are laughing and singing even at your guys. I love that you guys sing grace. Thank you guys so
lots
much
of hard
for
work.
sharing. Yeah. I'm excited to see what does happen with the building, but also, like you said, what happens with the prayer time, what happens with the choir, what happens with those little moments of authenticity in the midst of that. So thank you so much for sharing. And it was great having you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Sorry,
guys.
we talked an awful lot there. I think.
It's all right.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Love you guys.